My name is Greg Scher. I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Relations at Wright State University. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. I especially want to thank our moderator and our speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our moderator, who will then introduce our speaker. Our moderator is Dr. Erica Taylor, the Assistant Dean for the Boone Shaw School of Medicine, and she's going to take it from here. Thank you so much.
All right. Good evening, everyone. And I am so honored to be here. I have known, I'm going to call him a young man because I have known him that long. Dr. Robertson, I have known him since he was a student. And I am so pleased and so proud to see his growth as both an alumni of this institution, but as well as a physician in the community. You guys see, he's the guy in the commercials, by the way. If you guys are trying to figure it out, that's him. So again, just wanted to get an opportunity to learn more about Dr. Robertson and just hear his journey, both here at Wright State as well as the School of Medicine. So I'm just going to first start off with just a quick brief ask of Dr. Robertson. You know, how did you get to Wright State? What drew you to this community?
Number one, I appreciate and honor that you guys are letting me actually do this. But I kind of came to Wright State for several reasons. One is because it had the major I was looking for. I actually went into biomedical engineering, so it was like, hey, it had that. That was pretty cool. I really liked their Russ engineering building. And then there was also the fact that when I came and actually visit the campus, I enjoyed the tunnel system. I'm not a huge fan of the cold, so I really enjoyed that I could be in Hamilton Hall and pot right down the tunnels and never go outside all day long if I didn't want to. So that was a lot of the perks. I can't ignore the fact that it was close to home. I'm from Cincinnati, so this was not far away, but it was far enough away that I didn't have to stay at home. So I did that. So that's kind of what initially brought me in. But I kind of be remiss if I didn't mention what brought me back, because I actually have multiple degrees here from Wright State. And I definitely wanted to stay here for med school because it was just, it's just so welcoming. So the people are great. Like, you know, all the professors I had kind of coming through, the people that I met that were working in the med school, like yourself, were just so awesome to be around. So I really kind of wanted to stay here for med school. So I was really just excited when I actually got the opportunity to stick around and basically kind of spend my entire college career here.
Okay. And then I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping. I see Mr. Gray already beat me to it. But yeah, as we're going to go through a series of wonderful questions, learning more about Dr. Robertson, I want to offer an opportunity for the community that's listening to also ask questions. So the way that we do it, we use the chat box. So if you put a question in the chat, we'll be able to integrate the question into the conversation that we have with him. So we were talking a little bit about what brought him to Wright State. If you could be in a humble brag, how many degrees do you have with us?
I have 3 in total. I got my biomedical engineering degree. That was my undergrad. And then I did the dual degree program. So I did my MD, medical doctorate, as well as my MBA. So 3 degrees in total.
Okay, so it just sounds like you're just an overachiever and definitely a gem for the community. So thank you for that. Okay, so now let's get into, and I think you have some family and friends on here too, so this is going to be interesting. But so what are some of your best memories as a student here at Wright State? Since you have 3 degrees, it's a lot of years to span, but if you can pull out a couple to share with us.
So a couple. So we'll have some fun ones and some more learning and studious ones here. But if you're going to take it back to undergrad, there definitely was the times we kind of had this cohort system when I started out where we were all in the same pod. And so there was a whole bunch of biomedical engineering majors that we were there together. And so we would spend a whole bunch of time just chilling there in Russ. There was kind of this one that was more of like a biomedical engineering, or we called it BME lab. So we'd be on the computers there and we'd be doing MATLAB and things like that. And then we'd also do things like play Hangman and play Sporkle and do random things like that as well. So those are always great times because we would just be chilling. We'd be studying and all that. And of course, it was close to the dorm, so it really wasn't even that far to walk. It was kind of right away from the one adjacent to the student union, so that was kind of nice. Some other fun stories. So I stayed in Hamilton Hall for my freshman, sophomore, and junior year of undergrad. And so, for those not familiar, this is kind of like there's a boys' floor, there's a girls' floor, and it kind of alternates. Well, naturally, I was on the boys' floor, and we kind of do some things that aren't quite the most, the most appropriate. But one of the ones that are a little bit more appropriate to share here was we had this one fun battle where we were trying to see who could blare the music the loudest across the floor. And so one person chose from Pocahontas, "Colors of the Wind," and was blaring that against I forget the other songs. I was just so hilarious about that part. Oh shoot, what was it? Oh, "We Are the Champions." That's what it was. So they were trying to blare it against "We Are the Champions," and it was the most hilarious thing ever. Just turning up the sounds, and eventually, of course, someone came by and was like, "You guys can't blare your music that loud," but that was just a great and fun time. But if I'd have to go something a little bit more studious, I'd have to kind of go to just some of those times where I would pop into kind of different professors' offices. So whether it was like an undergrad, I remember one of my physics professors, Dr. Clark. It's like I was completely lost. I still cannot explain to you a Gaussian field, electric field to you to this day, but I got it right for that exam because I popped into his office and he was explaining to me, and I went through that. So again, just a lot of great memories. I went to med school. We had some really great study groups and intramurals, and we got to win the title because we basically just had the whole med school class was there playing intramurals. So again, lots of fun. I could keep going through a whole bunch of stories, but you guys probably don't want me to just regale all of my fun times here at Wright State.
Well, no, it definitely sounds like you had, a very involved and tight-knit support group. So that's really wonderful. One of the things that really made me most proud when I talked to you was your desire and love for mentorship. And we met when we talked about the mentorship from the students into the community in the clinics. But I want to go back a little bit further. There's you had some student groups back like Aspire and some other things. What really drew you to mentorship, and why is that important in this day and age to continue with the next generation?
Well, I mean, for me, it was just because other people were there for me to get me through. I wasn't the best student in high school. Like I did study, and obviously, math, science were really great and fun, but people kind of pushed me through, whether it was my parents, counselor, family, friends. They kind of pushed me to get through, to get in there. And then when I got into undergrad, there was this program that we called WrightMath, where it was basically just kind of tutoring math and trying to get people through, algebra, calculus, and all that. And Dr. Craighead, who I think basically retired shortly after I got there, was just like, "You know what? You'd be perfect for this. I'm going to pull you. You're going to do this. You're going to do this kind of mentorship tutoring program." And I can't, I'm so happy that I did, because I basically did that for the rest of my undergrad. I even did it for part of med school, and it's just so much fun when you're able to get someone that's like, "Hey, you were like me. I was having trouble. I was struggling, and then now, like, hey, you got through. You understand it, and all that." So, again, I just feel like it's so important because, like, you didn't get here, or I didn't get here by myself. So, just being able to pull someone else along to kind of get here as well is just so wonderful and so rewarding.
So that's great. So thank you for sharing that. There's a question in the chat that I want to interject, if you don't mind. It's from Miss Karen Hunt. It says, "First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Robertson for his video message to the student in a program I supervise at Clark State. Please share what swayed you from engineering to medicine. How did we sway you over on this side?"
So to be fair, I don't think it was really a sway because I actually went into undergrad thinking I wanted to go to med school. I just didn't want to be in school that long. So for my story here was I uh, I unfortunately have a lot of family members who weren't necessarily in the best of health. And so I got a lot more experience with hospitals and doctors than I probably should have. So I kind of got it from there. And then after a while, I was during one of my soccer games, I was playing like a recreational soccer game, and I fractured my tibia. So those unfamiliar, that's kind of near your knee is kind of where I fractured it. And so I got to spend the whole summer, because this was the day after school got out for the summer, on crutches and in a cast. But I did see a lot of the orthopedics office, and that orthopedist was just really cool and really awesome. And I was just like, you know what? I could definitely see myself doing this on a regular basis. And for the record, the cast came off basically the week I got back to school. So that was the entire summer I was in a cast because of that. But from that was kind of why I wanted to go into medicine. And then when I did undergrad, that's the reason why I chose biomedical engineering. So I was like, well, if I don't want to do medicine, this would still be pretty fun. I enjoy math, I enjoy science, let me do this. But then I kind of got to junior year and I was like, yeah, I guess looking at it as 4 additional years as opposed to 8 years in total wasn't super terrible. So then I actually went ahead and applied to med school.
Thank you for that. And we're going to get back to your medical school journey in just a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to focus in on the WSU undergrads, right? I commend every student that's on this call because you are dealing with education in unprecedented times. You have dealt with what I call Zoom University, which I know can't be hard, it can't be easy. And one of the questions in the chat was talking about taking tests. You and I both know I've given you many. So, test anxiety, like how do you deal with test anxiety or, just kind of just general worry, anxiety that students face? What would be some of your suggestions? Because I think Mr. Ben is saying, he's working on a lot of things. Finals are coming up. What would you say to him?
So for one, preparation was one of my big things to try to get over test anxiety because I am not, and I am still not, a good test taker. But I try to make sure that I'm just like extra prepared for the test. I really understand it in and out. And one of the ways that I really was able to understand things better was by talking through it with others. So whether it was with my friends, whether it was I was trying to teach it to someone else, whether I just like, hey, let me put the book down and try to run through this again backwards. And I feel like that was a whole lot easier there for something like engineering. But even if you can just like, again, just kind of put it into your own words. And so for me, that was making like a flow chart, a diagram, and then boom, like, hey, I get it. I get how everything connects. So with that extra preparation, it made it so that I could be more relaxed when I went into the exam. And then the other thing was if there was one that I was just like, hey, I really just don't feel comfortable. So for instance, like English, that was not my thing. Social studies, that was not my thing. So any of those type of exams, I remember taking like a European history class in undergrad. It was just like, hey, I had to put more diagrams, more things, kind of go through old past exams if those were listed, just to kind of practice. So I would do more things if I felt even more uncomfortable with it. And then if it really came to it, sometimes it was like, hey, I just need to get someone else, whether it was another student, a mentor, someone like that, just kind of run through any pointers they had when they went through the same thing. So that's kind of one of the big things I did during med school, or just going to one of like the tutoring sessions, just so I could kind of get more and more comfortable. Because unfortunately, it never quite leaves you, that test anxiety, but it's just like, hey, you do enough things where, okay, I can do it, I can go through it. And then when I'm actually in the test, one of the things I had to kind of get myself to do was to not beat myself up during the test. If there ever was a question that I just like, I don't know what the answer is, or I'm not sure, and just like, hey, I answered it, I put something down, let me move on to something else. It definitely helps you to get through the rest of the exam. So that was one of my things as well, was just like, I had to make sure I was extra prepared. I would do some additional practice tests or something like that if I was really not comfortable, and then just reaching out to others to kind of help run through things with me. That'd be my biggest pointers.
Okay. So there was a lot of gems in that answer. So I want to make sure, and you know, I'm a little bit older than you, so I've got to make sure I recap these. Okay. So it sounds like, you know, preparation is key, making sure that we can practice as much as you can. Repetition or space-based learning sounds that did work well for you. Not being afraid to ask for help. And many of us have struggled with that and reaching out to others when you need it. And finally, not beating yourself up when you are not perfect, because we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress, right? So progress, not perfection. What mantra do you tell yourself when you want to boost up your ego and to make sure that you can brave the fray, right? What do you tell yourself?
So I kind of have a couple ways. I have two big quotes that I just tell myself all the time. So one is from Nelson Mandela. The greatest glory in living is not never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And so that's one of my big ones. So anytime I have a stumble I didn't do as well, it's like, wait, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to keep on going. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is I pull another quote from Arthur Ashe, and usually it's part of the quote because the rest of the quote is more focused on kind of tennis itself. But success is a journey, not a destination. And so I kind of remind myself, it's like, hey, yes, I'm not at the end point. I haven't graduated, or I don't have that job, or I didn't finish this class, or what have you, but it's the journey. I've been completing assignments, I'm learning, I'm getting through some of this. This is still success. I'm still going towards this goal that I'm trying to get to. And then the last one is, there's a couple of songs, but the main one is by Luther Vandross. I know there's multiple versions of this, but Ain't No Stopping Us Now. I can't tell you how many times I have listened to this song, sung this song. I won't sing it for you because I don't want to make everyone mute their mics or mute the sound on their TV or their computers. But Ain't No Stopping Us Now, that is just something that I will play multiple times to try to help get me through, get me motivated, like, hey, I can do this.
I'm so glad to hear you have a theme song, and I'm so glad it's Luther. I really am. Sorry. Hope you don't know. I just call him by his first name. He's just Luther to me. So the other question is, and kind of just piggybacking on that, you know, what you talked a lot about, you know, if a student is struggling, pulling some of the pearls, and we really appreciate that. How do you find that inner strength when you feel like, I'm trying as hard as I can, I'm just not quite getting where I want to be? And maybe you're moving forward, but not where I want to be. Where do you pull your strength from?
So, but one of the things that I do, and to be honest with you, it's really from others, not so much myself. But number one, I know other people have done this, gotten through this, gotten to that destination, so it's possible. So, like, hey, if they've done it, I can do it too. It may take a little bit more time, it may take a little bit more effort, but I can get there too. So if I want it, I can do it. The other thing is just remembering why I did it in the first place. So, like, you know, for instance, for school, it was like, you know what? I want to be able to be a doctor, to help people, chat with patients, help them get through things, keep them healthy. So it's like, hey, that's my end goal. I can't do this without finishing med school. I can't do this without finishing residency. So just kind of reminding me of that endpoint also helps. But that doesn't mean I haven't had to, you know, give people a call and give me a little pep talk and anything like that. I've called many a friend, many a family member to give me that pep talk to keep me going. But that really is it, is just like, hey, kind of leaning on others to kind of help keep you going, keep you moving forward.
Sounds like you have many people in your life that you're blessed to have to draw on that strength. So that's really great. And having your support system is very helpful. So we have a future BSOM starter class of 2025 that has a question. Mr. Matt says, I'm starting Wright State in the fall for medical school. Any advice on transitioning from undergrad to medical school?
So the big thing I would tell you, Matt, is make sure you learn how you study best. Because the big thing I found in med school is that the material is so much faster than in any undergrad course I did. Even for engineering, anything like that, it was just so much faster. So if you know that, like, hey, you're a visual learner, you're an auditory learner, you need diagrams, flashcards, what have you, figure that out now, because going forward, you're going to just kind of be doing this and going through. And people will tell you, I had many classmates say, hey, you know what? You should be doing flashcards. Hey, you know what? You should just kind of read through, the entire textbook. That is not me. I cannot do that. But I know if I make a diagram out of it, if I can talk through it with someone, that made so that it made sense to me. So I kind of knew how I learned. So like, hey, I stuck to it. I incorporated new aspects from what other people told me. But if it's like, this really didn't work too well, I let that go and added something else. So just be adaptable, but know how you learn, because you could try doing something that you never do and it's not how you learn. You don't learn by flashcards, what have you. You're going to be just kind of just going and just spinning your wheels, trying to go through that.
All right. And then thank you for that. Moving on to your time in medical school, you've gone through the dual degree program. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what the dual degree program is and why you chose to do the dual degree program rather than the traditional 4 years.
Okay, so the dual degree program, for starters, so we have an option of doing along with the MD, doing either an MBA, Master's of Business Administration, an MPH, Master's in Public Health, or a PhD. Most of us that went through the program did the MBA or the MPH, and that basically adds an extra year to that full med school process. So I basically did med school in 5 years, and I also got my MBA in the process. Now, for me, I knew that I wanted my MBA for several projects that I wanted to do later on. I wanted to be able to do tutoring, especially in like high schools and junior highs, and just kind of make this and be able to kind of develop this model to do this kind of tutoring mentorship program. And so I wanted to know, like, hey, how do I run this business? How do I sell this? How do I make this a thing? I did also in the future want to potentially, like, hey, start my own like engineering, consulting business as well. So like I was considering that, and I knew that when I finished school and I finished medical school, I was not going to want to come back to school as a student. So that just was not happening. And I still feel that way, for the record. I still do not want to come back to school as a student. So with that, I need to go ahead and get this right now. So that was kind of my thought process. That's why I did the dual degree program. But of course now I'm using my MBA for other things. It helps me to understand kind of the financial side of just medicine as a business. So I kind of know that side of things. Been helping out, actually doing some event design, kind of helping to run a business in that as well. So just being able to use it for different things as well.
And then just a point of clarification. When you did your MBA, were you able to take a pause on your MD and focus on your MBA, or did you have to do it at the same time?
That's correct. So that's a good point. So we actually did have a pause of sorts. So with the way that it goes through, normally you would be just kind of running through kind of more of your book type work part of med school. And then there's kind of a more of a clinical type part of med school. And between those two gaps is basically where we put that MBA year. But basically what I got to do during that period was still stay involved in the medical school process. So I did basically a family medicine clerkship, which is basically kind of one of our clinical rotations. And I was able to do that as I went through my MBA. Now, there is different ways to do it now. I'm pretty sure that you can kind of do a quarter here, a quarter there, or not quarter, sorry, semester. I'm used to, sorry, it's on semesters now, a semester here, semester there. But it's still kind of that same idea that you kind of get that pause. And to be honest, one of the things I enjoyed about that pause, because again, as I mentioned, medical school is really fast paced, is it allowed me to step back and just kind of realize what I liked about medicine more so than anything else. Because as I probably mentioned, I was thinking about orthopedics, like that was kind of what got me there, that cool orthopedic doc. But I'm doing family medicine now. So I kind of got to step back and see, like, you know what? Family medicine's more my style. So.
And so that actually naturally progresses me to the next question. So why family medicine? How did family medicine sway you? And I tried hard to make you a pediatrician. So
you sure did.
Yeah.
You sure
so
did.
Why family medicine?
So my big thing was, obviously you go through med school, you're learning all these different things. And one of my big things was that I wanted to prevent things before they happen. So diabetes, hypertension, I wanted to kind of prevent that before it happened. And unfortunately, with a lot of the specialties, you're getting people after things have already happened. They already have bad arthritis, they already have bad diabetes, they already have heart issues. But with family medicine, you could do that. Like, hey, you could prevent them from even getting the obesity, getting the hypertension, getting the diabetes. So that was one of my big things that I enjoyed. And as you probably remember, my pediatric rotation was one of the times where I did kind of get more swayed to doing the primary care. And I was considering doing pediatrics, but here was my thing. I wanted to do more than just kids. So pediatrics, 18 and younger, sometimes you can stretch that out to 19, 20, but again, I wanted to do all ages. And so family medicine gets the entire gamut. I got to do kids, I get to do, adults. And so I didn't get swayed into pediatrics fully, but that did discover my love for family medicine in general.
Well, I guess grown people, that's fine. You can take care of them. But again, and I think that it's just a benefit to the community that you're there and you're able to take care of the whole family from birth all the way to the end of life. So I think that is such a blessing to have you in our community. And then I'm going to go to the question in chat but before I do that, if you could just comment on what would be one of the biggest responsibilities that we have as physicians to our community that we serve.
So I would say one is just being a role model for the community, because I can't tell you how often, whether it's talking with patients or talking with other people, of just setting an example of like, hey, like, yeah, do you work out? Do you exercise? Yeah, do you try to eat healthy? Being that role model of, like, hey, what kind of things do you want people to do? How do you want to treat other people? And just kind of seeing that example, because I've even had a few patients or children of patients that have come to me and be like, hey, can I do what you do? And it's like, oh, yeah, sure, you can. Like, well, how do I do that? And it's just like, it's always just so interesting just how much of an effect you can have. And again, it's not like I know anything more about just the world in general than anyone else, but for whatever reason, it's just like, hey, you get to be that cool role model for a lot of people.
So it sounds like that underlying mentoring comes rearing its head again, right? So you're now mentoring for your patients and their families, and that's wonderful. I'm going to jump back to medical school just briefly. We have a question in the chat. Mr. Christopher Hogan says, what extracurricular activities did you participate when you were an undergrad, and how did they make an impact on your medical school experience, if any?
So I did a few different activities. So one, I mentioned the WrightMath tutoring. So that was one where I basically would tutor for a class, and for the one that I did, it was calculus. So I was kind of helping to tutor calculus, and I would kind of go through a course with them. I also did something called the conduct review panels, which I'm pretty sure Chris is alluding to here. But that was one where basically any time that me as a student or anyone else as a student had some trouble on campus, sometimes that would go before what we call the conduct review panel. And so with that, it was basically a way of like, hey, you could actually have your peers kind of hearing what went on, what happened, what you were thinking about when this happened, so that it actually could be a more appropriate intervention to try to help whatever happened, whether it was some issue that happened in the residence hall or some issue that happened in a classroom or anything like that. And so that was actually kind of a really cool process, because then I got to see kind of just how other people do things and other people's point of views. Some other things that I did was NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. I'm trying to think here. I did do visions mentoring for a little bit there as well, out of the Bilingua Center. What is this taking me back here? Intramurals. I can't believe I skipped over intramurals. Intramural soccer, that was my jam the whole way through, until I got into the later part of med school. So intramural soccer, that was always my jam. I feel like I'm forgetting other things here that I did here. Oh, I know. Yes, I did. I got to do some research with Dr. Hopkins, one of the previous presidents of Wright State, to see how we could kind of help, getting people through Wright State and kind of getting them to the finish line as well, in terms of like, hey, do we need to provide more support, more tutoring, more things like that. So all in all, just kind of doing all of those things really just kind of got me, like, I was able to get more perspectives of what other people were thinking. Because I feel like I've been very fortunate in terms of just kind of where I've come from and where I've been able to get to. But not everyone's had those same experiences, and I got to see just different points of view and different experiences and see how other people approach things. So I kind of am able to not really take as many things for granted. And I'm able to kind of give myself a pause and see like, well, how's it looking from their point of view, which is kind of a really cool thing to be able to do.
Yeah, so it sounds like many of the activities were both enriching for you, but as well as helpful for the application process. And just a plug, again, this is my opportunity to plug Wright State. We do a holistic approach. So for Mr. Hogan, we look at all aspects, including both your academic as well as your involvement. So my thing is just to get involved. Whatever you're passionate about, that will reflect in your packet. So something you can speak upon with passion and heart and desire, will translate it to the interview process. And of course, we want to have a diverse but well-rounded set of physicians. So just know that I think in most medical schools have something similar of a holistic approach. There are definite benchmarks you have to hit. So make sure you know your numbers, the score for the testing, for admissions, and your GPA. But other than that, you want to make sure you also have other enriching experiences, like Dr. Robertson had mentioned, to make you say that this is not just one focus, you are multifaceted, which of course he is with all the letters behind his name. So, all right. There's a question from Mr. Matt, and I'm just going to read it verbatim, okay? Do you feel out of step or out of practice when you completed your master's year and then came back to clinical rotations?
So fortunately, I did not. And that was one of the benefits. So when I said that, like, hey, I kind of got to stay in and do some family medicine clerkship activities, that basically meant that, like, hey, once a week, I was there in the clinics seeing patients as like a standard medical student would, chatting with attending physicians about what's going on. So I didn't really lose that medicine aspect. And we have like a cohort of us. So there's, for my group, there's about 5 of us that was going through this at the same time. So we would also be chatting about various medicine things as well during some of our classes, whether it's MBA or MPH things as well. So I didn't really feel out of touch. I will say when I did get back into it, it was just like, whoa, this is faster paced again. But I didn't really feel out of touch. I feel like it was kind of refreshing and just kind of a nice breath of fresh air before I kind of finished up med school.
Okay. Okay. And thank you guys so much for the questions in the chat. It's very helpful to guide our conversation. One of the questions, again, we are talking about this thread of mentoring throughout the whole conversation we've had so far. You decided to continue your mentoring with the Alumni Association, the Wright State Alumni Association Board of Directors. Why do you continue to give back?
Well, I mean, I at some level I feel obligated to, because again, I know people were there for me to get through this process. But I know one of the things that, again, as I've chatted with people and learned from other people, is that part of it is just that exposure. If I had never been exposed to a doctor, hadn't been exposed to what they do, well, there was no chance that I would ever have chosen to be a doctor. So just kind of having that exposure and be able to try to make that opportunity for other people. And especially with the Alumni Association, I mean, we have a large group of alumni from Wright State that are proud to be alumni of Wright State. And, I feel like most of us do want to try to give back and try to help out and do things for current students, just as we had that help as we were going through. But life gets busy and it's hard. So trying to figure out ways where we can kind of make that connection for alumni that are busier and further from campus and all that is just another fun way to try to help myself give back to the people that helped me to get through this process.
So now transitioning, you are out, you're done with residency training. You're now the big MD, right? So you're no longer a training resident, you're an attending physician. How's life on the other side, friend?
Well, it is wonderful, but it's not quite as wonderful with, I won't even mention it here, but I think you all kind of know what happened in 2020 here. So with that, it hasn't been quite as fun, but it's still rather enjoyable, chatting with patients and just still learning. That's the thing that I just kind of find the most enjoyable is that it's not in a classroom setting, but every day I'm learning something, I'm looking something up. Hey, was there some other treatment that I could try for this patient? Hey, they're not responding to this. Like, what else can I do? Who do I need to get them to? Chatting with other doctors here in the office, like, hey, I've got this situation going on. I've tried this medication, tried that. I feel like I'm missing something here. What else could be going on? And just kind of bouncing ideas back off them. Just always a learning process. And it's just so refreshing to be able to go through that. And to actually just realize that, like, what, all of those years of training, the 4 years of med school, the 3 years of residency, like it mattered. Like I got here and like, I know what I know what areas I'm not quite as good in, but I know who to get people to get them the help. And it's just so much fun and so rewarding. And every time I see a patient that, like, hey, they were having trouble, they were struggling, and then it's a year and a half later, and I just see them, they're jumping for joy, they're moving around well, their knee doesn't bother them anymore. It's just so wonderful. It's just so wonderful.
And you mentioned something about representation. Again, we're going off book in the questions here, but representation in medicine in particular is very important, particularly for physicians of color. What would you say to the young man that is in high school, middle school, that was now, when you broke your leg, right? You're now the doc, right? And the thing. What do you say to that young man about if they want to be in your shoes?
So number one, that they can do it. That's number one. It definitely takes a while. It takes perseverance, but if you want it, you can do it. I try not to just really plug people to do like, hey, I want you to be a doctor, do this. But if it's something that you enjoy doing, make it happen. There's plenty of ways that you can help out, give back. and be that representation, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in engineering, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's some other business. Like, you can be that example, that person. But I would definitely agree that in medicine, the representation, especially for people of color, is not quite there where it should be. And so, like, hey, if you're willing to do it, definitely do it, because you can get there. There's people like yourself, Dr. Taylor, who help people like me get through med school. So you definitely have the support. As long as you put your mind to it, you can do it.
And we want people to know that there's a community of us that are wanting to hold a hand out, guide your pathway to get to your goal. And I think that Dr. Robertson had mentioned something that was very poignant for me, is go where your heart leads you. I can tell every child that they can be a physician because they can, but whether your heart and your passion is for that, that is up to you. And I can't answer that question for you. All I can do is provide opportunity for you to see another view of the world and another pathway that you can take. So just as, it could have been a flip of the coin that Dr. Robertson could have been Mr. Robertson, an engineer, and he would have made just the equal amount of impact on the lives of someone else. So it's just going where your heart and your passions lead you. So definitely. And that's what you draw when you are the dark times, right? When things are getting a little bit harder, you draw on that passion and why you're truly here, because you mentioned that in our conversation of drawing from that. And then Dr. Lyman says, as a graduate of the first class of BSOM, back when it was simply WSU School of Medicine, how proud am I to see how the school has grown and matured and graduating young physicians such as Dr. Robertson. I think that is a very nice sentiment and definitely well-deserved. And then, you talk about your alumni communication and your communication back to the community. As you know, you're a star. You do commercials now. You've got things going on. How important is that to maintain that connection? You can either address it with the community, alumni, both. Your choice.
It's super important because, for me, I feel like it keeps me grounded. Because I know I've done a lot of things, like, as you mentioned, I have a lot of degrees, but again, it doesn't make me any better than anyone else. And so being able to kind of see what other people are going through, see what other areas I can help in. Again, this pandemic has made it hard to do things like, hey, the tutoring that I wanted to do in schools and things like that. There's other ways that I can reach out and try to help other people to kind of get to where they want to get to. And it's just so rewarding. I feel like that's a big reason why I feel like it's so important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I totally echo his sentiments on that. And then we have, WSU has beautiful pipeline programs to a lot of future careers that definitely can be investigated and to talk about. For instance, Horizons in Medicine is one for high school students that are interested in medicine summer program. So that's something that you can check out for juniors and seniors. So there's definite pipeline programs, and that line of mentoring remains constant and remains consistent throughout our community here at Wright State. So definitely a place that we can call home, and you can have people there to stand by you and stand with you. All right. I see it is 6:45 and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Is there any other questions for Dr. Robertson? Because the last question is going to go to his family and friends on the call. So, okay, seeing no further serious questions. All right, so the floor is open up. So you've got a bunch of family and friends on here. Is there any question from family and friends that you want to ask Dr. Robertson? And we definitely thank all of you guys for supporting this young man, because he is awesome. Oh, I don't know if, can we unmute? Sorry. Mr. Christopher? Yes.
Yeah, I just would actually like to make a statement, not a question. It's good to see Michael. I'm the current director for the Office of Community Standards and Student Conduct And I remember when Michael was a volunteer for our office, and then now I see him on the commercials all the time. So I'm always like, I know that guy. Yeah. So I was happy to see that this was going to happen. It's a pleasure to hear things are going well your way, and keep up the good work.
No, thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mr. Chris. Anyone else? There's a rumor that your mom is on the call. Is that true? Oh, I see her. I see the thumbs up. Okay. So,
Michael, this is Carolyn Wright. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And your commercial is wonderful. I said I did the same thing. I know him. But I just want to commend you for all the work you've done while you were at Wright State and working with the African American alumni when we were trying to do the career pathways event, which I can't remember the name of it right now, but that was kind of your baby, and you ran with it, and you continued to help us keep that going, and it's so important, and I can see how it has played out in what you're doing now, and just really want to commend you for that. I'm running a nonprofit now in Dayton called Parity Inc., and so I'll be calling you the mentor.
I won't mind at all. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
yes, ma'am. Miss Marilyn.
Thanks for the great presentation. It was just very encouraging for us old people even. But more importantly, obviously I'm not watching the right channels. What commercial are you in?
Yeah.
So it's rumored that they slid me into a few commercials for Premiere. One where I have a mask on, one where it's kind of like a half mask and partial non-mask. But I know that it's run during several sports programs. I've heard that it's been on during House Hunters and other things. I won't say how I know that information. But I know those were definitely a few of the places that it's been on.
Oh, sir, you made electronic billboard. No.
That's-
75. You were on electronic billboard on 75. Because I saw it. I'm just saying, I'm not throwing it out there as a thing, but it's a thing. It's a thing. Okay.
I'll be watching.
Thank you, Miss Marilyn. Any last comments for Dr. Robertson?
This is Karen Hunt, and I just want to say I saw that billboard as well, and
Yes.
you look good. But yes, I will have. I am just so thankful to you for the students that have heard your message, who are on that fence of can they be a doctor. So that's why I wanted you to share with them, because I can tell them they can all I want, but hearing it from you directly or video-wise was great. So count on me calling you again, maybe when all of this is over, to do something in person with them.
Sounds great. Sounds great. I appreciate it, Karen.
Right back at you.
And then the last, I guess, as we're wrapping up, I do want to take a minute on behalf of Wright State University School of Medicine, Boonshoff School of Medicine. I got to say it now because it's the big name. We cannot express how proud we are of Dr. Robertson and all that he's accomplished and all that he has done. He has done all the things that he has done for each one of you and your respective organizations. He's done for us at the School of Medicine. He was always first on the call to do every volunteer opportunity, even though I told him he needs to delegate, but he was always there to answer the call, and we are internally thankful for him, and we are proud that he chose us to continue his career, and he is a proud alumni of us. So again, we are glad that you stayed, and we're glad that you're part of our community here in the Dayton area as well.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to thank both Dr. Taylor and Dr. Robertson for doing this evening. If there's no other questions, we can wrap up. I do want to do full disclosure here because this is sponsored by the Alumni Association. Michael is actually our current vice president of our board, and he's going to be our president of our board for the next 2 years, starting in 2022 through 2020, the end of 2023. So if you like our programs, if you like events like this, that is what the Alumni Association does. We engage our alumni for the benefit of fellow alumni and primarily our students. We're here to support our students. So anything that we can do, we certainly will. So I do want to thank all of you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Robertson. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. And please have a wonderful night. We did record this. If you do want to share it with anyone, it will be on our website probably next week. We have an Alumni Speaker Series webpage on there. We do have another Alumni Speaker Series coming up in June. I don't have the date. It is not confirmed yet, but be on the lookout for that. As a previous attendee of this, you might get an email inviting you to the next one. Have a great night, everyone.